Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah. Wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. As-Suffah Academy parents, I hope you are all doing well. Thank you for all that you do. I'm making this video the Monday after parent-teacher conferences. And parent-teacher conferences is very nice. I know it was stressful for some people, and there was some waiting and all that type of stuff, but it was really nice to have everyone in the building like that, so many people. And while I was there, I was just reflecting on how I think already this year, we are 2 months into the school year. We've had 3 different parent seminars. We've had open house. We've had a round of conferences now. So we've had at least 5 incidents, 5 events by my count, where we had the staff together, the parents together, and the students together, all in the building coming together for the purpose of enriching and enhancing our ability to reach our young people and raise them according to the best of ways. And not every school does that. I've been in schools where conferences were fairly lackluster and that type of thing. And it's just a good thing for the students to experience that, for the students to have. And we've also had very many parents with us during the school day and coming into classrooms and being present during the school day. Thank you to all the parents who've done that. All that is just really good for many different reasons, but just in a general way, just for the kids to feel the togetherness of the parents and the school staff, just for them to feel that everyone's working together for their best interests. All that provides a safe feeling to young people and a feeling of being cared about, which is helpful in all sorts of ways. So anyway, in this video, I know a lot of teachers went over test results with parents, so this might be a little redundant to some things that you learned during conferences, but I also want to make sure everyone knows how to read the results from the testing that the students did in September and know some more detail about it and some considerations for it. So at As-Suffah Academy, we test the students we'll test them 3 times during the year: the spring, winter, or the fall, winter, and spring. And the fall is what you call a baseline test, especially with us having so many new students, to get an idea of where students are at. And with the MAP test, the NWEA is the organization that does the MAP test. The test is called the MAP test, which stands for Mapping Academic Progress. It is almost 20% of K through 12 students in the United States do this test at least once during a year. It's not the standardized test that is mandated by the state of Minnesota. That's the Minnesota Comprehensive Assessment, or any other state. But this is a test that schools commonly use to get a measure of where kids are going to fall on standardized tests and just what their academic needs are and what they can do independently, particularly in math and reading. So you would have gotten a report emailed to you. You would have gotten multiple reports this year because I had the team, the office team, send multiple reports. So you would have at least gotten one that looked like this. Bismillah. And again, your teacher, your child's teacher might have gone over this with you, but I just want to make sure everyone knows what to look for on this and kind of what it means. So this up here, this is a blank one, but this is a sample one. But here it's a student name. It would have your student's name up there, grade that he or she is in, and then this big number is their overall score on the MAP test. Now, so you understand the MAP test. The MAP test is different than MCA scoring, because if you've had your kids go to another school and you saw MCA test results or what they're going to show you there, the first number in an MCA scored is always the grade that the child is in. So if they took the MCAs in 3rd grade, their score would be something in the 300s, and then they have a 0 to 100 score after that, depending on how well they did. And if they did really well, they get 399. If they did really poor, it'd be down towards 301 or whatever. But the MAP test has a continuing, ongoing score that isn't tied to grade, and therefore it is meant to increase throughout their academic career. And each year, the scores that get different ratings as far as where the child is at, or as far as how they relate to other kids in the country, which is a nice thing about the MAP test. It gives you a very good idea of that. Those numbers to get different ratings continually go up. They continually go up as kids progress throughout the grades. So for this example, like if we have a student, so the score 176, you might know what their score means. You can't necessarily tell what it means on the MAP test by just looking at the score. So it becomes important to look at is this part that says norms percentile, okay? Now, the percentile gives you a percentage ranking of where they relate to everyone else who has taken this test. And about 9 million kids in the United States take the MAP test every year. And there is about 55 million K through 12 students in the United States. So almost 20% of students in the country take this test. So knowing where your kid sizes up regarding other kids who take the MAP test, it is a really valid and good indication to understand how your kid relates to other students at his or her age and the whole rest of the country. So in this sample student who's in grade 3, if the achievement here, it says 32nd, that means that this student did better than 32% of other students who took this test in 3rd grade. And it means, in turn, that he or she did worse than 68% of the students who took this test. And then NWA, they apply a rating to this, and if it's below 50%, it will say below mean. It will say low achievement down here. If it's from, I believe, 50 to 65%, it will say median or average achievement. If it's 65% or above, it will say high achievement. And if it is below 35%, or no, I think below, I'm sorry, if it's below 35%, if it's below 50%, it will say low achievement because it's below average, okay? The one to the left is their growth score. So based on the averages of students from NWA's large sample size, they have determined statistically what an average growth is for a student from one test to the next or 1 year to the next. So if the student has taken it before, it has an average for that. And this student's growth score was in the 10th percentile, which means their growth was better, the growth that he or she made from 1 year to the next or one test to the next is better than 10% of students in the country and therefore not as good as 90% of the country. So you consider this this example is not a high achieving one, okay? Something interesting that you can also look at on here, you see it says reading up here, and then if you look 3 rows down there, it tells you the date the student took the test on, and then it tells you the amount of minutes they took on the test. This is actually something really good for parents to look at and to sit down with your kid about, because looking at this student, him or her, I mean, there's going to be over, somewhere from 40 to 50 questions on this reading test, and they have to read passages before answering those questions. So seeing that this, and, they would read the question, go back, all this type of stuff. Seeing that this student, what these minutes here means is how long the student took taking the test. So this student completed his or her reading test in 13 minutes. That is very, very low. And we will actually be looking at outliers like this as a school, and some students who we think may have a low score because they breeze through the test too quickly. We might actually retest them. And, this is something that we'll call attention to students before taking the next test, and for something for parents to talk about, especially before the spring one, which we consider to be kind of a final assessment of how students did during the school year and how we did as a school, of course, Bismillah. Whereas the fall one is more of a benchmark or, baseline, okay? Just to see what this looks like on math, it's very similar, okay? This sample student, we have better 197. So here you see the 80th percentile. So that would mean this student in math scored better than 80% of the students in their grade who also took the test in math and did worse than 20%. So this is high achievements, and the student's growth was better than 61% of students. And again, high growth. And if interesting, if you see up here, you look at the minutes, you see much longer, the 34 minutes it was taken to do this one. than the other one. Now, you see these instructional areas, okay? So every question on the test goes into an instructional area category. And these instructional areas relate to the curriculum, and they relate to Minnesota state standards. And understanding this a little bit is how you can understand the more detailed report that you got sent home to you, which would look more like this. Now on here, this is a sample one. And you see it has the score in there, but what this longer report tells you, this report actually tells you every question that the test asks is linked to a skill or something the student is supposed to know how to do, and it is assessing whether or not that student knows how to do that. And the MAP test, the way it works, actually not every student gets the same question because the test is responsive to how the student answers. And if it gets a question wrong, it might give them one question as the next question. If they get it right, it might give them another, to find different kinds of levels and to just assess in a dynamic way. And where so it's called the MAP test, the mapping academic progress. Where that mapping really comes into play is in a more detailed report that we have access to on the back end and that I've asked the office team to provide to every parent this year, is a more detailed roadmap that shows what the student actually needs to develop based on what they got wrong on the test. Now, when you look at this, you'll see things listed out like this that have one of those instructional areas listed. For this one, it's numbers and operation, just like you saw on here, these 4 instructional areas: numbers and operation, algebra, data analysis, geometry, and measurement. You will see one of those listed. You'll see a subtopic. For here, it's calculate with rational numbers. And then you will see an actual Minnesota state standard with its code number and what the skill actually is, and detailed what the student needs to develop based on their answers coming back. Now, to understand how the Minnesota standards are coded, okay, pay close attention here. You see there is this 4-digit number, 3.1.2.2. The way the Minnesota state standards are coded, every Minnesota standard in any subject area, and of course a standard is what in the state of Minnesota a student's supposed to be able to do by the end of a grade level. Every Minnesota state standard, this has a 4-digit code number that has, and each number in that code represents a different thing. So the first number always represents their grade level. So 3.122, that means this is a 3rd grade standard. Okay. Now the second, so any standard in 3rd grade math is going to begin with 3. Now, when you see this and you look at your student's detailed report, you will likely see some standards that this begins with that are actually below the student's grade level. And that does not necessarily mean that the student's is at that grade level per se. But it just means that there was one thing that they missed on the test or something missed on the test that showed that they didn't do this, and they were supposed to have been able to answer that question correctly in 3rd grade or in the lower grade, whatever grade it says. Now, the second digit in the standard, which like you see here is 1, the second digit for math, and I believe this is only set home for math, and math is the one that I'm concerned about because getting kids caught up in reading is a little different thing. And I'll have follow-up videos that talk about this. The second digit for math, each one represents one of these instructional areas. So in the standards, they have focus areas, and they all fall under one of these instructional areas: numbers and operation, algebra, data analysis, geometry, and measurement. So if that second digit is 1, it means it's a numbers and operation skill. If that second digit is 2, that means it's an algebra skill. If that second digit is 3, it means it's a geometry and measurement skill. If that second digit is 4, it means it's a data analysis skill. And that's the general way that students learn math through school in general. They first, in the early elementary years, they have to get very good with numbers and operations, which means your addition skills, subtraction, division, multiplication. Then you start to put those things together in algebra. We'll actually even put them together before algebra, because even long division you have to put multiple things together with, which you could do in 4th grade generally, maybe touch on in 3rd grade. Then once you learn algebra, you learn geometry and measurement, where you are learning how formulas from algebra relate to predicting things about shapes. And then data analysis usually has more of a focus in high school, etc. All these things are we throughout. But in general, what you will find, because this report is listed in a way where it's kind of bottom up, you will usually see numbers and operations listed first. And even if you don't, you should find the section that is the numbers and operations section, and you want to start with that with students. Because a student who still has things they need to work on with numbers and operations, that is something when they get into the older grades that can really hold them back. Because the older grade math assumes that things related to subtraction or related to addition and multiplication, division, that it's going to be automatic. But if some of that is not, that's something that we want to give that student remedial work on. And for if you are not satisfied with your student's math score, this is typically a good place to start. Helping your child is getting them some help in their basic math facts with multiplication, division, addition, and subtraction. And these standards will tell you even more specifically what they need to work on. And I'll do another video where we talk more about helping with math, helping with reading, what we're doing as a school, what parents can do, what other things can be reached out to offer. But I want everyone to understand how that relates to this, to reading this report. And this report becomes very, very useful in helping students, because we have a literal roadmap of what they are supposed to, or what they still need work on based on their test. Also, too, if you were to hire a tutor or someone, or have an older sibling or cousin or someone help your child as a tutor, you can give that to that person, and it gives them a specific roadmap of from A to Z of the skills that they need to work on, and they can start at the beginning. So email me any questions to me, brothers and sisters, that you have about this. We will, I'll have them include that in the email this goes out to. Jazakumullahu khairan. Barakallahu fikum. And I wish all of you and all your families and children the most success, inshallah.